Poverty is now a crime in the United States. At least that's what a lot of people in the United States woke up to this morning. On July 24th, 2025, President Donald Trump released an executive order ending crime and disorder on the American streets. So what is this new executive order, and how does it impact the working poor, the working class, and the most vulnerable Americans in this country? Because this executive order aims to address homelessness, vagrancy, public disorder, and it does this mainly through simply criminalizing the poor in America. The executive order asserts that America has been overrun by homelessness and that the numbers right now are the highest they've ever been at almost 250,000. But in reality, those numbers are over 700,000 people living on the streets in America right now. The hope of the executive order is simply to make America a safer place. It frames homeless people and the poor as a danger to society, as people who are mentally deranged or suffering from a massive addiction. And as I said, it aims to address this by simply criminalizing that group of people. It's true that mental illness and addiction run rampant in the homeless community, but it doesn't make them criminals necessarily. These are people who are struggling to survive. These are people who are living in the harshest conditions that any American lives in. And for most people, it's not because of choice. It's either, yes, because their addiction or their mental illnesses took control, or for many people who are finding themselves homeless on the streets in America right now, it's simply because the cost of living has made it impossible for them to stay housed. And that's why one of the reasons you've seen so many people in America choose to live in their car, choose van life, because it's an affordable option, but this impacts them as well because they are by definition homeless. You may consider your car, your Sprinter van that's decked out, or even in some cases, maybe an RV to be your home. But in reality, most people just see you as a vagrant, homeless, a drifter, a burden and a bother on society. And if you find yourself in that condition right now, if you find yourself in the condition where you're living in your car, your van, even though you still have a job, this criminalizes you. This isn't just an attack on the poor. This doesn't just criminalize the poor. It criminalizes the working poor. It criminalizes the working class. It criminalizes anybody who's on the verge of homelessness. When it comes to addressing homelessness in America, there's always been this idea of housing first, that the priority and strategy to actually getting people off the street would be simply to get them housing. Because when you have housing, it's easier for you to actually go out and get a job. So the lack of housing is actually one of the largest barriers that many homeless people have to actually getting off the streets. But by deprioritizing that housing first and moving simply to enforcement, this creates a nation where if you find yourself falling through the cracks, if you find yourself just on the bad sides, the vicissitudes of life, if you find yourself down and out, you are now an eyesore and a problem, and it's the country's responsibility. It's the police department's responsibility to get you off the streets. It's not about housing, it's about enforcement. And there has been precedent before for finding and criminalizing those who are found sleeping outside in public spaces. And this just strengthens that cause. This strengthens that viewpoint of enforcement. This executive order talks about enforced drug treatment, enforced mental institutionalization. This is something that we've gone away from for decades, for generations now. And it's not practical. It's not practical because since we rolled back institutionalization for mental illness and all sorts of other problems, the amount of psychiatric hospitals we've had in this country have been declining. And there's only, 53,000 beds in America. And say that the actual homeless number in America is 775,000, but the bill talks about there being 220,000 or something like that. Now let's go ahead and assume that that 225,000 number is actually those who have severe mental health problems, severe mental illness. If they're meant to be forced to be institutionalized and there's only 53,000 beds, and that's 53,000 beds that are open to the public in whole, that means that there's hundreds of thousands of people who aren't actually going to be placed into psychiatric institutions. What does that mean? That means that the next move, get these people off the street because they're criminals, because they're dangerous, because they are a problem for society and a danger to the public. The only next answer would be put them in prisons and jails. And that leads with the next problem with this executive order, which rolls back consent decrees, which protect people, all people, from the abuses of power of local government and local enforcement authorities like police departments. They protect your rights, but in this executive order, it ignores the rights of individuals. It ignores the rights of homeless people because it doesn't deem them as people. It just deems them criminals. There might actually be good intentions behind this bill, but the execution to it is just inherently flawed because it doesn't deal with the numbers. It doesn't deal with upholding the rights of the people that it means to target. And it simply doesn't address the underlying issues which are pushing more and more people into homelessness right now in this country. The fact is, people are teetering on the edge of homelessness constantly. More and more people now, as cost of living continues to rise, and the cost of housing continues to rise, and the availability of affordable housing for low-income people or people without incomes has been rolled back due to cutting Section 8, rental assistance, food programs, keeping the federal minimum wage at sub $8, and implementing tariffs which are affecting small businesses and large businesses all over this country, resulting in the layoffs of hundreds of thousands, no, millions of people at this point. And the fact that at this point the labor market is so saturated with jobless people, and jobless people are people who are always teetering on the edge of homelessness, that it can take between 3 and 9 months to get a job. If you don't have the reserves, if you don't have the savings to actually go ahead and make it to the point where you have another job and you can pay your bills, it's very easy for many people to find themselves being homeless if they can't go ahead and sign up for the debt to carry them through that period of joblessness in which they are in. This is a bad order. This is an unconstitutional order. This is an inhumane order. And again, it's an order that targets and criminalizes the poor in America. We knew that this was coming, and it's something that we've said in many of the videos before, that there's a concerted effort to drive people in America into poverty as we see the wealth disparity in this country grow. The fact is, the people in charge in this country right now are completely out of touch with the struggles and the life that the basic, normal American has to go through every day just to survive. This executive order stems from an ideology that comes from privilege that the wealthy usually carry, that those who are in poverty are simply slaves to their own vices, that they're criminals, that they're degenerate, that they're the mentally deranged, that they are above it all, and they just need to get them off the streets because they're society's problem. Lock them up and put them away because they'll never actually improve their own station, and you know what? They're not worth it. They don't want to see the tents in the cities, the tents in the parks, the tents and the people that are there because of the decisions that they've made that have ruined this economy, that have ruined this job market, that have devalued our dollar, that have stolen the wealth and assets from the normal American person, that has destroyed the middle class, that has put the working class in the same position as the working poor. They don't want to actually change the root causes that are driving people to homelessness, and they never have. Because as I've said, it's the position of the wealthy, it's the position of the entitled to look at poverty and look at poor people and say that they are the problem. When everyone who's suffering through poverty, when everyone who is poor understand that the problems with this country that lead to such disparities in wealth, that lead to such disparities in lifestyle, are the result of institutional decisions. Yes, of course, there's personal accountability for the actions that people take, and people do mess up and make the wrong decisions that put them in a bad position. But our country, our economy, our culture is driving people in this country mad. It's driving people down. It's driving people down into positions where they find themselves so vulnerable to actually being homeless. And that's what we need to move away from. We need to go away from criminalizing the poor and just throwing them in psychiatric institutions, just throwing them in prisons. What we need is affordable housing. What we need is decent paying jobs. What we need is the federal minimum wage to go up. What we need is more protections for workers, more protection for the poor. What we need is more unions throughout every industry in America so that workers actually have safety protections and make sure that they're actually making a living wage. Not a poverty wage, but a living wage where they can actually live their best life. That's how you get those tents off the streets, and that's how you get people off the streets. When you give people a cause to live, when you give people opportunity, they will take it. The vast majority of the time, they will take it. But when you make life so expensive and unbearable to live, when you give people no purpose or cause to actually move forward with their lives, it's very easy it's very easy for people to actually fall through the cracks and fall into homelessness. We can do better. That's the reality is in our country, we can do better. It's not going to be through an executive order that denies the rights of American citizens, even though they're poor, even though they're impoverished, even though they're homeless. It's not going to be through institutionalization and imprisonment just to clean your streets. It's going to be through giving them opportunity and giving them the resources that they need, giving them the support, the encouragement, and the community that they actually need to be thriving members of our communities. That's what we need. That's how we fix this problem. But instead, with this administration in this moment right now, we've decided to make the poor criminals, to make being poor in America a crime. If you're still here at this point, like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member. If you have any ideas or anything you want me to talk about, go ahead and say it down below. If you really want me to see it, a donation always helps. Again, we appreciate you as always, and it's Friday. It's the end of the week, and we're in the middle of summer. So if you have the opportunity to maybe do a little barbecuing this weekend, go out there, get some sun, actually live a little bit of life, or maybe, hey, make a couple sandwiches and go hand them out to poor people. Hand them out to people on the street. Do what you can. It's hot outside right now. Ice cold bottles of water, baby wipes, sandwiches. In some places it may be hot during the day, but it's still cold at night. So blankets are always something that homeless people need. So don't feel the urge to just run away from them and push them away. They are members of our community and they urgently need our help. So do what you can, as always. Because our government is owned by corporations and the wealthy don't care about us and they don't care about homeless people. But the homeless people, they're part of our community. So let's do for them whatever we can. But anyway, thanks for stopping by and I hope you guys have a good weekend. Take care.